Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you another video. And today, we are going to be continuing What If Issei Was the Ghost Rider? Highschool DxD, Mark of the Dragon, Season 2, Part 2. As always, before we start today's video, if you enjoy the content on the channel, then don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't, please check yesterday's video and upload, as that was the Season 3 finale for What If Issei Was the Shield Hero, Highschool DxD, Curse of the Shield, Season 3, Part 3. But today, as we get into the next installment for What If Issei Was the Ghost Rider, where we last left off, we had Issei teaming up with Irina and Zenobia, along with Kiba, Reunite, and Koniko, as they continue their search for the Holy Swords. In this timeline, so much has changed in the world of DxD. Irina is now the wielder of the boosted gear, that being that of the Welsh Dragon. We also have many newer foes coming into the picture as we continue on with this series. A lot of things that you're going to be surprised about as we change and go along with this story. Those who you thought were once the villains might now be the heroes. Those who were once seen as the heroes might be even greater villains. All that and more as we continue the story of Issei, as he is imbued by the spirit of vengeance and is now the Ghost Rider. But without further ado, we're going to get into today's video, so as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Issei and Reunite would soon go and pick up Koniko, before eventually arriving at the meetup spot with Kiba, Irina, and Zenobia, as the six now had to come up with what they were going to do in order to track down and destroy the Holy Swords. They decided to split up into two groups, with Irina and Zenobia checking the east, while the remaining four devils would go and check the west. They would go inside of Issei's car as he drove them through the town under the cover of night. Everyone feeling a bit anxious for what they were going out to achieve, unsure of the dangers they would have to meet along the way in the process. For Issei, racing through the streets were pretty much normal for him, and with his enhanced abilities, his driving had gone up tenfold. For him, essentially crashing would almost be next to impossible. Although for everyone else, to try to maintain themselves as the car picked up certain speeds that no one believed that any car could ever go, well, that would take some getting used to. Eventually, though, they would arrive to an abandoned warehouse, Koniko remarking that they had once met a stray devil there not too long ago. It was here where freed Selzen would be hiding, as he imbued his holy sword once again. Kiba would go up against them this time, as the two sword users would clash with one another. It soon became a matter of speed, even Issei being impressed at just how fast the two of them were able to go. Of course, everyone would have a reason to jump in at this moment, but they understood Kiba's feelings going into this fight. They knew that he truly wished to destroy all of the holy swords, and Issei, being the spirit of vengeance himself, he wouldn't deny Kiba what he had sought after, allowing him to be the one to deal the finishing blow. Although along the way as the fight continued, Issei would choose to lend a helping hand. Freed was moving around too quickly for Kiba to make any real contact, so Issei would unsheath the chain wrapped around his waist, extending it out forward and binding it around Freed's ankle, imbuing it with the power of the Ghost Rider, holding him in place and making it hard for him to move. Now keeping him stationary, Kiba would use the extent of his balance breaker sword burst, creating many blades from either side, forcing Freed to defend and fight them off. It looked as though Kiba were going to have the advantage and they would soon have Freed taken off the board. That is until a familiar voice would step out of the shadows. Everyone turning to see a rather older priest. The man revealed to be none other than Valper Galilei. He would inform Freed that in order to use the Holy Sword to its fullest extent, one had to channel their own power into it like a funnel, allowing it to form a loop that would form continuously, going in and out between the body and the blade, increasing the power and the flow. Once Freed was able to do this, he was even able to snap the chain that Issei had binded around him, eventually gaining the upper hand against Kiba once more, although his victory would be short-lived, as both Irina and Zenobia would arrive not too long after. Seeing that they were surrounded, Valper knew it was time to pull out, telling Freed the two of them would disappear at once using their summoning circles, leaving before Issei or Kiba could get their hands on them. Everyone then set off after them all at once, although Issei would stay behind in a brief moment. He looked back towards Reynir and Konako and the others. He knew that they wanted to help, but now was the time for them to draw back. Rias and Akano would arrive then after. Issei explained to her everything that happened so far, and Rias was thankful, as she had been the one to ask for Issei's help from the beginning. This was the part of the mission where Konako and Reynir would have to stay behind, as their continued involvement could bring a bad reputation on that of the House of Grimmery. Reynir, of course, did want to continue following after Issei. However, even Rias would have to intervene in this moment, telling her that while she understood her feelings, as a member of the House of Grimmery, there were certain customs and rules that Reynir had to follow, regardless of how she felt. All the same though, Reynir would wish Issei good luck, and he assured her that everything would be fine. While he was gone, he told them to make sure that Asya was okay, and they agreed, going over to her side at once, while Issei would then catch up with the others. He, Kiba, Irina, and Zenobia all getting inside of his car, the wheels blazing down the streets as they went going out in search under the dead of night, hoping to find Freed or Valper Galilei wherever they could be hiding. After their search though, they would stop for a break, Irina and Issei walking off in the distance to speak alone. The two of them hadn't seen each other in so long, not since the accident, and so much in their lives had changed since then. They would go over what had happened and explain where they had been and what they had been up to. Irina learned that her parents were once servants of the church, that they too were exorcists. However, they weren't strays like Freed. They truly lived a good and wholesome life, and they were true warriors. The accident that they died in when Irina was younger, they had been on a mission as they had gone to the city of Rome. They were going there to investigate the Holy Swords, but unfortunately they were attacked and killed in the process. Irina at first was a bit upset that she wasn't told the truth sooner, but when they tried to find her, they already found that she was taken in by the Hyodo family, and they deemed that it would be much easier if she lived a normal life. Even with her latent potential with holy power, there was no need to force that type of lifestyle onto a child at all. As such, they allowed her to live the normal life that she did with Issei, although they did keep tabs on her from afar. By the time they had gotten wind of the attack on her and her family, though, it was too late, and she and Issei were the only ones that remained. It was during the night of the accident, when the two of them lay bleeding on the road, after they had been stabbed through the chest and skewered by Reynir, that Michael, and Lady Mephisto arrived, each one looking after the child in particular. For Michael, he had understood the power that was inside of Irina, that of the boosted gear, a power that couldn't be allowed to fall into the wrong hands, and as such, he made it his duty to train her personally. Even still, she had now been reborn as a holy ace, seeing as how the angel system worked on a deck of cards, just as the devil system worked with the chess system. As for Issei, he told the story of how he was taken in by Lady Mephisto and reborn as a Ghost Rider. Now carrying the spirit of vengeance, he basically acted as an operative of the underworld, taking those who were evil and vile and sending them to face their righteous judgment. In a way, Irina was proud of Issei. He wasn't necessarily a devil, although he couldn't be considered holy either, since the actions of the Ghost Rider weren't exactly seen as all too favorable up in heaven. But they couldn't be seen as evil either, since he did only capture the souls of those who were wicked. The Ghost Rider was a complicated type of figure in their world. No one truly knew how to feel about the Ghost Rider, or rather what side it should be on. It was called the Spirit of Vengeance, but it didn't serve in the holy capacity. While its origins were from the underworld, it wasn't purely that of a devil. You could say that the Ghost Rider in and of itself was the ultimate wild card among their factors in their systems. The Ghost Rider could be anything and everything all at once. It encompassed the ultimate gray area. If everyone else was black and white, the Ghost Rider was the ultimate shade of gray, as its actions could be viewed in favor from either side of the spectrum, depending on how you chose to look at it. For Issei though, he didn't really think of that all too much. The only thing that had mattered to him was finding Irina and bringing her home, but now that he already found her and learned of what had happened, that might not be as easy as expected. Irina was shocked though when she learned that Issei attempted to attack a holy temple, and of his fight with Zenobia when he was trying to find her. Under normal circumstances, she should have rebuked him for doing something so rash and heinous. But at the same time, there was a part of her that was truly flattered, her heart flustering for a moment. The idea that Issei was so determined to find her that he was willing to burn down heaven itself. There was something beautiful about that in a twisted sort of way. It meant that despite everything, she truly was on his mind and heart, and that he didn't forget about her, and he had been doing everything in his power to find her. She was truly grateful in that moment. The two of them unsure of what the future might hold for either of them. They never knew what could happen. If things didn't go right now, all-out war could break out amongst the factions. Technically speaking, Issei got his powers from a devil, so there was no telling what side he might fight for. But for now they chose to focus on the bright side and the mission at hand. Although before going back to the search, Irina would comment on the new car, Issei's black Skyline. She asked what happened to the Mustang, and Issei would have to explain that he kind of got into a bit of an accident in the underworld and the car got absolutely wrecked, and this new one was granted to him by Lady Mephisto. It actually suited him a lot more since it was much more faster and a lot more in terms of speed than even the Mustang was, although Irina did miss that classic car at least. Before long though, there was also the conversation of Rainier. Issei had to explain why he spared her, and why she had been trying to make amends the way that she was, that she had been doing everything she did under the orders of her father Kokobiel. Of course, from that point of view, Irina could understand why Rainier was in the situation that she was in. But at the same time, she didn't know if she could ever really forgive her. Even if Rainier were under the orders of someone else, her actions did result in the death of Issei's parents. And while she had been working to atone, the sad matter of the truth was that no matter how hard one tries to atone for their sins, there just may simply never be enough. For Issei, that was something he struggled with every day. Rainier lived with him and Asya in his apartment. But all the same though, there were some nights when he was wrestling with the decisions that he had made. Some nights he would have dreams. Dreams where he destroyed Rainier, where he hurt her, where he punished her in every unfathomable way, only to wake up and regret the dreams that he had. There were some moments when he wasn't sure of how he felt. This was the girl that seemingly took everything from him. And yet without her, he wouldn't have the life that he had now. He wasn't sure of just how he should feel in this moment. And these are feelings he would have to deal with in time. In the meanwhile, everyone would eventually split up and go their separate ways to cover more ground. Although Issei and Irina would stay together though, Zenobia and Kiba going their separate ways. As Zenobia was on her own though, she would have the misfortune of running into Kokobiel, as well as Freed. And their holy sword of destruction was taken from her in the process. Not too long after though, Rias would use her familiar to go out and search, to find where Issei or the others had gone. While searching through the forest, the familiar would find the body of Zenobia, and Rias and those of her household would go to check on her, as well as ordering for Sona and Tsubaki to join them. And Saji came along as well, seeing if they could get her any sort of healing or medical attention at once. Asya helping out as she could also. They would give the call to Issei and Irina, and they would go over at once, finding Zenobia. When they tried to figure out what had happened though, the group would then be confronted by Freed once again. Issei's skull was now blazing as he was ready to go and fight. However, Freed would quickly back away, stating that he didn't come for a battle this time around, but he came to introduce them to his boss. Everyone looked up horrified. Rainier, the most shocked and fearful of them all. For hovering above them was none other than her father, Kokobiel, a general in the government of the fallen angels, his 10 black feathered wings holding him high above everyone else. As Kokobiel looked down upon them, he would take note of his daughter, now that in the service of the House of Grimmery. He openly laughed, joking at the idea of his daughter actually joining that of the devils, the true irony of it all. All the same, he would introduce himself and he would make his intentions very clear. Why he had chosen to steal the holy swords, why he ordered for the attack on Irina and Issei. Now learning the truth, it was revealed that what Kokobiel wanted was a war. It had been so long since the last great war, and he wanted that feeling again. He wanted that fight. He wanted a chance to go all out and test his limits. But now, ever since the battle came to an end, it seemed as though everyone was passive and only wanted peace. Even the Zazel now, openly stating that there would never be another war like that ever again. It made him sick. He wanted conflict, chaos. What was the point of having all this power if you could never use it? If trying to kill the Red Dragon Empress, stealing the holy swords wasn't enough, then maybe wiping out 2 sisters of the great devil kings, Sir Zex and Seraphal Leviathan, would be enough. Delivering the bodies of Rias Gremry and Sona Sea Tree, Maybe that might get the war going. He decided that this town would be the good place for a war, and that the school would be his ground zero. As he bid them farewell with a blast of energy causing everyone to scatter, he and Free disappearing as they were making their way towards the school campus. Issei would join the others as they all went back to the school quickly to prepare for battle. An all-out fight against Kokobiel now on the horizon. And failure could result in all-out war between the great factions. The worst possible outcome for everyone involved. Issei would help Zenobia get to the infirmary, where Asya would help heal her, along with a few others. Sona and the House of Citri would form the barrier around the school. And Rias, her and her household would be tasked with holding off Kokobiel. Akano even going as far as to state that she had to send in a call to Sir Zex, so that his forces could arrive to assist them. Even though Rias was against her doing this behind her back, Akano explained that under these circumstances, there were certain calls that needed to be made. And with no choice, Rias and the others would set out to face against Kokobiel, as they were the only ones that stood between him and ultimate annihilation. As everyone arrived to the school, Rias would have to put a battle strategy together on the fly. Thankfully, she had Issei there to assist her. The power of the Ghost Rider would be invaluable at a time like this. Of course, everyone would do their part, hoping that their power would be enough to hold off Kokobiel, hopefully until Sir Zex arrived. But Rias was feeling a little different now. She felt as though they could truly win this, even without her brother's help. As long as they played their cards right, they could come out on top in this battle. As they made their way to the schoolyard, they would see where Valper was. He was doing some sort of ritual with the 4 holy swords they had collected. It seemed as though they were going to be merged into one. In the meanwhile, to keep them busy, Kokobiel would summon Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, from the underworld to fight them. The others would all go to take on the Great Hound, Rainier even getting involved as well. In her own time in training, Rainier was searching for her own power, something that made her unique, something that would give her the edge. Of course, she could still construct holy weapons made out of pure light, even as a devil. This made her rather rare and invaluable to Rias, mainly because of the fact that a devil that could use the power of light, that was a whole game changer. Even Valper was shocked at this. He had never seen or heard of a devil being able to use holy light before. For Kokobiel though, he chalked it up to her fallen angel heritage, and that must have been what carried over into her life as a devil now. But Rainier had been learning newer ways to channel that light energy, not just to create weapons, but constructs themselves, to the point where she was actually able to make constructs out of light energy. Something akin to the Green Lanterns, if you're wondering. Using this power, she was able to create constructs like binding chains or things of that nature, the only limits being her imagination and her power overall. And she had a good deal of it, being the daughter of Kokobiel and all. Even he were impressed to see just how far his daughter had come, although he wished she had used her talents on his side, then they could have really gotten something going. As the battle continued, Issei would use his crowbar and beat in the head of Cerberus, the dog quickly becoming afraid of the flaming skulled being, as Issei used his pendant stare on the beast, causing it to cower in fear, as it yielded to the ground, and eventually, Issei would use his power. As the black skeleton hands would appear from the ground, they would surround the great dog, and they would pull it back to the underworld where it belonged. Everyone else was shocked in that moment though, as they didn't think that Issei would have that type of power within him, to actually bind and hold the great Cerberus, and to actually restrain it and send it back to hell on its own. It showed just how much power the Ghost Rider truly contained, a power that was not to be underestimated under any circumstances. Kiba would arrive as well not too long after joining in the fight, and as he had done so, both Kiba and Issei would turn their attentions toward Valper. As fear started to shine across his face, he now saw the two eyes of his being of existence, now making their way towards him, the two of them ready to dish out the punishment, and for Valper to face his judgment. Thankfully, the merger had been finished, and now the great holy sword had been created, Valper giving it to Fried as a test run, telling him to hold off the others and destroy them. Fried was all too eager to gain the powers of the great holy sword, which channeled 4 powers into one, among them being the holy sword of destruction, giving him an added boost of strength as well as to his speed, along with the ability to create multiple images of himself, as well as the ability of invisibility also. This power proved to be great, and even Issei struggled with him a bit. Even for the powers of the Ghost Rider, the Holy Sword was still an incredibly powerful weapon, and not one that should ever be taken lightly by anyone of this realm. Even beings like Lady Mephisto and Sir Zex were wise when engaging with a being with the Holy Sword. Even if they were a mere human, the power of the Holy Sword alone was one that could bring to ruin even the strongest of devils. As they continued their fight though, Fried gaining the upper hand and managing to send everyone back, Issei would attempt to use the full brunt of his Ghost Rider abilities, bringing his hellfire to the surface as he blasted it towards Fried, who sliced through it in half. Fried and Issei going to blows with one another, Issei not easily being defeated, although he was knocked down a few times. Fried continued his rampage through everyone. Irina, using the boosted gear, transferred her power to the others on the battlefield, hoping it would give them the edge that they needed in the fight. But all the same, Fried still managed to hold them back as well. As Kiba continued on though, fighting desperately to try to destroy the sword that caused him so much pain, Valper only continued to add insult to injury, as he explained the horrible process for which the holy swords were created. Originally, there were humans who were capable of wielding them, as they contained a special mana and energy within them. However, as time went on, that power became more diluted, and it became rarer and rarer that there were beings capable of wielding a holy sword naturally on their own, without the assistance of a boost. The Holy Sword Project saw to it that children were tested on to see who had enough of a capability to wield the Holy Sword. But it was then that a new idea had been discovered, to drain them of this special mana, this essence. If enough of it could be drained and collected, it could be formed into a crystal, a powerful crystal that could then artificially enhance any human to be able to handle a holy sword. For Irina, she didn't have to worry about this. While naturally, even in her human form, Irina didn't actually have enough mana on her own to wield her holy sword Mimic. She really didn't need to worry about that. For one, the boosted gear was more than enough power, so she didn't really need the boost of the crystal in the first place, although she knew others that did. But still, even for her, to learn the process in which they had gained their powers, it made Irina start to question things a little. Not that her faith had been entirely shook, but still, the idea that such a practice could be used even till this day, despite the horrible past that it came from. And Valper felt the same. They branded him a heretic. They called him a blasphemer. They kicked him out of the church, but yet they stole his research? It was nothing but hypocrisy to the highest levels, and it was why he despised them so. For Kiba, though, in that moment, he lamented in the fact of the fallen comrades that had all died. They all believed that what they were doing was in the service of God, and that they were truly making a difference. Valper even holding up the crystal that was made from the souls of his fallen companions, as he threw it towards Kiba in mocking tone, telling him that they had long since been able to find a much more safer way to do it, without the need for martyrs. Like Kiba, the power that had been collected from them, while useful, was now entirely worthless. As Kiba clutched the crystal into his hand, Issei's anger began to blaze. His need for vengeance, his thirst for justice, it started to become insatiable. But he could also feel another power brewing. As the flaming Ghost Rider walked towards Kiba, everyone wondered what was going on. He grabbed one of the swords that were on the ground, imbuing it with his own energy, the sword becoming that of the Hellraiser once again, a sword created from the essence of the spirit of vengeance. He gave the sword to Kiba as he placed a hand on his shoulder, telling him that he could sense the conflict, and while under normal circumstances he was the one who dealt out the punishment, this was something only meant for Kiba. As such, he turned over Valper to Kiba at once. As he did so, Issei understood what he was doing. Valper was one of the 99 souls that he needed to reap, and the contract clearly stated he had to do it himself. For Issei to turn over the soul to Kiba and allow him to take the retribution, he was effectively breaking the contract. He knew there would be consequences, but even for Issei in that moment, there were some things greater than the mere rules. As Kiba held onto the sword and to the crystal in hand, the souls of his comrades all shined around him, their silhouettes encouraging him to live on, that their dreams and memories did not die, and that they would not be left in vain. The souls would enter inside of Kiba, awakening his power, his balance breaker now reaching to the surface. As Kiba held up the sword of the holy Hellraiser, the spirit of the Ghost Rider and the spirit of his comrades now merging together, holy and devil power uniting. Kiba now formed the holy devil sword, the Hellraiser, a power that combined two opposing elements. Although he was not the only one getting involved in this fight, as Zenobia made her way back as well. While bandaged and a bit bruised, she healed quite better than most. She thanked the others as she looked to unsummon and bring out Durandal. As both she and Kiba walked forward towards Freed, they agreed that a sword like that needed to be destroyed, that it could serve no purpose in this world. And together, they would destroy the holy sword, smashing it into pieces and defeating Freed in the process. With the battle now won for them, they turned their attentions towards Valper and Kokobiel. Valper now left in utter stun. How could such a sword like this exist? How could these powers even be merging? Not just those powers, but the powers that Kokobiel's daughter possessed. Holy and devil power uniting as one? The only way that such a thing could exist, the only other possibility would be. And as quickly as he came to that realization, Valper was struck down. Kokobiel laughing to himself at a moment, remarking that for all of Valper's hard work, he stumbled across the one thing he wasn't supposed to find. Now seeing as though all of his plans had gone to hell, Kokobiel decided that now was the time to get involved himself. As he hovered on his throne above the school, he decided that playtime was over. They had about 20 minutes or so until this whole town went up in smoke. He told Irina to use that power to boost up someone on the battlefield, that would be the best use of her power in that moment, since he could tell that even now she didn't have enough energy to take him down herself. Irina looked around to everyone, and she wondered who would be best suited for the power. She walked over towards Issei and grabbed his hand, the two of them walking forward as her boosted gear continued to ring out the words boost, over and over again. Kiba, Zenobia, and the others would buy them time. Rias and Akino joining their powers, everyone attempting to take out Kokobiel, to deal any damage possible towards him. Even Kiba using the Holy Hellraiser sword, he was able to do some damage, even managing to cut off Kokobiel's arm, only for him to have it reattach and take him out. Rainier in that moment though would meet with her father. She begged and pleaded with him to stop, that this didn't have to be the way. To start a war, it would ruin everything. However, Kokobiel would only blast away at his daughter who attempted to fight with her constructs of light, remarking that he had such high hopes for her, but now she were nothing more but a disappointment to him in his eyes. All of that training, all of that hard work, and for what? For her to betray everything that she'd stood for to become a devil? She were truly a disappointment of a child. However, Rainier would stand her ground even against her father, Issei being filled with rage as Kokobiel continued to beat down upon her. Even Irina started to feel regret, seeing just how much that Rainier had gone through. In that moment, everyone began to feel for her. Asya, Akino, who could also relate to the situation Rainier found herself in, and Rias. They wanted to stand with their ally, someone who had been trying so hard to change. However, Kokobiel only continued in his insults, remarking that a leopard could never change their spots, that she could never wipe away everything that she had done. Her life had been filled with so many wrongs. She had committed so many atrocities in his name. And now she wanted to play the hero? Don't make me laugh. Foolish daughter. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you fight, I will always live inside of you. For a piece of me is you. And no matter how hard you fight your destiny, you will always be the daughter of Kokobiel. And that is a stain that you can never wipe away. Rainier in that moment rebutted. She didn't care in that moment what happened to her. She wanted to do what was right. She knew that she might not be forgiven. She expected that, and she was prepared to live with it. But the only thing that she couldn't live with is to keep walking down that same road. Maybe in another life she never changed, and her story came to an end much earlier. But now she had a chance to write a new story, to set a new path for herself. She knew that this was the road that she wanted to walk down, no matter how hard it might be. And Rainier unleashed her full power, giving everything she had to hold off her father. She stood between Irina and Issei as a spear of light went rocketing towards her, much similar to what had happened to the two of them. Irina found herself on the receiving end of the spear of light as she fell to the ground, having been impaled. Issei and Irina would be shocked, but they knew they couldn't move at that moment. The boosted gear was almost finished, going up to its max. Everyone else though ran towards Rainier's side. Irina, now becoming angered, she yelled at Kokobiel, telling him that what he did was unforgivable. But Kokobiel only remarked that there was no one left to forgive him anyway, and that they were the fools to continue fighting for a useless god. Irina knew what he meant by this, and she warned him not to say it. But Kokobiel only laughed. If they didn't know the truth, then they really were pathetic. When they asked what he meant by this, as they tried to help Rainier, he told them the truth. The reason why the Holy Devil Sword could exist, why a being like his daughter, someone who was a devil who could use holy power, why all of this was happening, the truth was right in front of them. During the last great war, God and the 4 previous Devil Kings died in combat and were gone from this world. Everyone was stunned by this news. Zenobia even finding it hard to fathom that God could actually be dead. Asia, who had had so much faith, she wanted to know what was happening then. Who was listening to their prayers? Kokobiel explained that Michael was the one acting in the place of God, keeping the system functional. However, the key word was functional. It wasn't as strong as it used to be. It was only able to maintain exorcisms and prayers and things of that nature. The system was able to work, but it was never going to be as strong as it once was. And imagine if the whole world found out that God no longer existed. Well, that could definitely spell the end for some. Everyone began to feel their faith shaking in that moment. With Rainier critically injured, these truths and reveals all coming to light, no one knew what to do in that moment. However, the boosted gear would time out at its max, as Irina transferred the power to Issei. Issei's eyes began to glow. The skull now being ignited with a new flame. A flame that was once a bright hue of red and now turned to a dark crimson. This was crimson-powered Ghost Rider. Issei boosted to the max. Kokobiel could definitely feel the power coming off of him. But at that moment though, a hint of fear started to fill within Kokobiel. As the two of them went face to face with one another, everyone watching on as the battle was about to begin. Kokobiel attempted to go for a strike, but Issei countered easily, delivering a few right hooks and a few body blows himself. Even for the larger Kokobiel that towered him, Issei continued to pour on the violence. The beatdown for Kokobiel was unimaginable. He had never felt this level of pain before, and yet every time he tried to resist, the worse it got. The anger for what he had done to Reunite, for what he had put her through, for everything he had done up until now. Issei found a new mark to take out his vengeance. The beating for Kokobiel was absolutely merciless. For many, while they knew this was the right outcome, and many cheered for Issei, there were some who were becoming a bit afraid. Issei was starting to lose himself in the Ghost Rider, his anger boiling over to the surface as he continued to rain down blow after blow, grabbing Kokobiel by the wings and ripping them from out of his back. He slammed him into the ground repeatedly over and over again. Kokobiel tried to stab him. He tried to blow him away with his holy spears of light, but they felt like nothing. They were mere tickles to Issei right now. The one thing that was known about Issei more than anything else was that when he was pissed, there was no stopping him. For the others, they started to remember his fight versus Riser Phoenix. They remembered what he did and just how ruthless he became. Issei's beatdown of Kokobiel became absolutely merciless, almost to the point where it became hard to watch. As Reunite was helped and healed, Irina staying by her side, now unsure of how to feel. She had truly lived up to what she was trying to do, and she took being pierced and almost killed for her. Reunite slowly got to her feet and watched as Issei continued to destroy her father. With the little strength she had, she walked past everyone, even the others who tried to stop her. As she walked over to Issei, as he held up a beaten and bloodied Kokobiel, she hugged him from the back and told him that it was okay, that he could stop. Issei yelled a furrowed scream, before eventually the fire would dissipate, the power of the boosted gear now expunging from his body, and he turned back to normal. Falling to the ground, Reunite would try to hold him up, but she too were in no condition, as everyone rushed towards the both of them, holding them up and making sure that they were alright. When the barrier would be broken out of nowhere, and a being of white would descend upon them. The being was in armor, his wings shining like that of the full moon, as he descended upon Kokobiel. He remarked that this was more excessive than he was expecting, but all the same, it made his job a lot easier. Everyone was stunned to see that this new fighter had arrived, Rias recognizing that it was the White Dragon Emperor. Irina was now on high alert, as her boosted gear began to shine, Dreg speaking from it to the White Dragon, as he turned and the voice of Albion spoke as well. The two fated dragons, destined to fight, the two exchanging words briefly, and Irina feeling a bit anxious. She had heard of the White Dragon Emperor, but she never thought that she would actually get to meet him. The White Dragon would fly off though, with the body of Kokobiel and the body of Freed. However, Vulper Galilei still lie on the ground, even though he had been stabbed and fatally wounded. he was still just barely alive. As both Kiba and Issei walked towards him, Kiba looked at Issei and said that this was for Issei, and that now he could still fulfill his contract. Issei nodded, and he performed the ritual. As the dark skeletal hands began to appear from the ground, Valper begged for mercy, but none would be given. Only looks of contempt and disgust as he was dragged down to the underworld, and his soul was reaped. With the fight now over, Kiba would apologize for everything he had done, but Rias would assure him that all was well, and that once a member of Grimmery, always a member of Grimmery, and he was welcomed back into the house with everyone. Rainier had her wounds tended to, and Zenobia had some healing to do on her own as well. Some attendants from heaven would arrive not too long after. Not only did they pick up the pieces of Excalibur, but Irina also decided to turn in her holy sword Mimic. She understood why the power was needed and why it would be used, but for her, she didn't think this power was what she needed. Not with the way it had been gained. As she was preparing to leave though, she would be surprised that Zenobia didn't come with her. Although now that Zenobia knew the truth, Irina knew what the next outcome would be. Sadly, Zenobia would have to be branded as a heretic and be removed from the church. But she had actually come to grips with that reality. She had to now live in a world where God no longer exists, and find a new path for herself. It would be difficult, but in time she would learn to live with her new life. With nowhere to go, Rias decided to offer a spot in the House of Grimmery, giving her the ability of the night to join alongside with Kiba. Zenobia would become the new knight in the House of Grimmery, now joining them as a devil, apologizing and making amends with Asya for how she behaved. In Asya's kind nature, she was all too quick to forgive, and instead happy to gain yet another new friend. For Issei, he was happy for her in this moment. Asya had the kindest heart of anyone he had ever seen. She was more ready to forgive and more willing than anyone he had ever known. She was the opposite of vengeance in every way. She was truly compassion. As Irina was leaving to the airport though, along with her escorts, Issei would go to see her off, the two of them sharing a long hug with one another. He told her that they should at least keep in contact, and Irina promised they would see each other again. Before leaving though, she would give him a kiss on the cheek, assuring that there would be a next time. And Issei was just happy to see that the girl that he had cared for so long was safe and powerful in her own right. If she learned how to get a mastery over that boosted gear, she was definitely going to be a great force in the future. But there was also the matter of that guy, the White Dragon Emperor, whoever he was. Just what role did he have to play in everything? With that, he couldn't tell. Eventually, things would settle down for a bit. Issei preparing to go out for the night, Asya sound asleep as always. Rainier was up, and the two of them decided that they would just go out for a drive. They weren't sure of where the night was going to take them, but for now, it really didn't matter. They just wanted to enjoy each other's company. As they did so, they made their way to the boardwalk, everyone walking about, Issei and Rainier standing on the pier, looking up at the full moon that shined down upon the city. The two of them, at least hopeful for the future. As they stood together, another man would walk beside them. The man was in a business suit, and he commented that was really a beautiful moon. He asked what the two of them were doing out this late at night. A young couple. The two of them would blush and try to not make light of their situation, though. That was until Rainier saw who the man was, and her face turned pale white. Issei could tell that something was wrong, and Rainier, she looked as though she had seen death itself. The man standing next to them, as he smiled wickedly. He introduced himself. His name was Azazel, Governor General of the Fallen Angels. He especially looked towards Rainier, who seemed very shocked to see him, and Issei was extremely nervous at the same time. Hey there, kid. Seems like you and I have a lot of catching up to do. You've been a very, very busy girl, and I've been trying to get a hold of you. Let's talk. In the meanwhile, overlooking the city itself, a boy with dark hair, watching over the city, his left eye scarred. He was standing next to a man with black hair himself, in a dark green suit. So, it seems the Governor General has called in one of the 4 horsemen. Do you think this is a sign, young master? No, I don't think of it at all. I must say, the fact that the white one is one of the 4, that truly intrigues me. I wonder how you managed to recruit him of all people. Indeed. But there are other matters, though. The forces all seem to be gathering together here at once. Do you think there'll be a problem for us? No need to worry, Nightmare. After all, even if they all join together, they still stand no chance against us. More specifically, me. But we'll wait, and we'll let them continue to do what they do. Pretty soon, we're all going to be meeting one another. And I'll finally get a chance to see Mother again. After all, it's been such a long time since the family got together again. This concludes What If Issei Was the Ghost Rider? High School DxD Mark of the Dragon, Season 2, Part 2. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we are going to be concluding What If Issei Was the Ghost Rider? High School DxD Mark of the Dragon, Season 2, Part 3, the Season 2 finale. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.